Picture a scenario with us. Dusk is approaching. You are walking down a trail in the forest, surrounded by trees and the life they hold. The air is filled with silent chirps and the slight rustle of leaves following a cool breeze. It was hot during the day, but it is cooling down now. Suddenly, you stop in your tracks and look at the canopy that the trees provide. The sky appears to be orange and red with some hints of gray. The sun appears to be slowly settling down into the nest of clouds on the horizon. It is getting darker, but you stay still. You let it all sink in, all that you see, hear, and all that you feel. This just feels different. Much of the reality we live in is governed by physical and chemical axioms, and the waking world seems to follow certain set rules. Even when we try to manipulate them, we are forced to adhere to their natural order. We've developed tools to measure these phenomena with remarkable accuracy. We understand how nature works, operates, and its functional value for us. So why should this sunset just feel different? After all, it is just a bunch of trees, a giant orb in the back, and expanses of condensed water vapor hanging in front of literally empty space. Or is it just that? Enter the Japanese observation Yugen. In Zen and Japanese Culture, Daisetsu Teitaro Suzuki explains, Yugen is a compound word. Each part, yu and gen, meaning cloudy impenetrability, and the combination meaning obscurity, unknowability, mystery, beyond intellectual calculability, but not utter darkness. Even the word Yugen is an example of the obscure and yet understandable aesthetic. Elements of consciousness itself have been measured through many dimensions. Scientists have devised and tested countless tools to measure human happiness, progress, and personality. And yet, the origins of consciousness seem to be obscure, and by association, so are the origins of life itself. Thus, perhaps there are elements to nature which do not follow strict rules, particularly with regards to human experience. In its essence, Yugen captures this obscurity of human experience, all while remaining grounded in the reality of the things around us. We are part of this world, but part of us appreciates the facts that things hold meaning to us beyond their apparent value. To appreciate this particular aesthetic, one should understand what aesthetics are. In a nutshell, aesthetics form a branch of philosophy concerned with the appreciation of beauty. In pop culture, aesthetics is seen in light of how visual and auditory arts feel in sensually pleasing patterns. Yugen is undoubtedly a type of aesthetic. However, it is the appreciation of patterns of naturally occurring elements. Thus, the sunset scenario is just one materialization of this aesthetic. Think about it. Have you ever been fascinated by clouds moving swiftly across plains? Have you ever copped a gaze or two at mountains in the horizon, seemingly shrouded by distance itself? Or perhaps you have enjoyed a walk in the park under a brightly lit sky, casting faint light on the grass and hedges around you. These situations are simply examples. You might have in fact experienced this aesthetic in a completely different setting or time of the day. Write down in the comments of such a situation if you have experienced it. We'll appreciate that. However, Yugen is not concerned with just any form of appreciation of nature. For example, looking at the starry skies above and thinking about it as literally otherworldly, or that it is a literal presentation of heaven, does not exactly fit in the aesthetic of Yugen. Yugen entails being mesmerized by nature while being grounded in the reality that the elements we are being fascinated by are actual physical elements. This grounded element of the Japanese aesthetic is what differentiates it from simple fantastical thinking. Remember, we are appreciating nature, not overly exaggerating it. Rather, we are expounding on the feeling that we get. Not that there's anything wrong with exaggerating elements of nature to the point of obscurity. After all, this is prevalent across many cultures. Often, people across South Asia consider the moon as a representation of beauty itself. Such representation aims to give personal or cultural attributes to natural elements. However, Yugen is fixed on the premise that we are observers of nature. Instead of putting our own values over these majestic elements, we are engrossed by their own value to us. In this case, we are humbled by nature. We are humbled by the serene sight of the starry skies or the long grass on the plains before us, dancing in the strong gusts of wind on a partly cloudy day. In fact, one could even argue that describing the grass as dancing is giving our own constructed value to it. So, perhaps a style of written art following the Yugen aesthetic would be devoid of such expressions. It could be something akin to, "The grass is moving in the wind and I feel mesmerized by it." It is the sense of being grounded in reality while enjoying and taking in the beauty of nature which sets the aesthetic apart. The element of respect sets the foundation for our admiration. Thus, Yugen is the sense of being humbled by nature, to appreciate it without appraising it, to experience its mystery without actively trying to inject obscurity. This further gives a certain honesty to this aesthetic as well, a true sense of sight and experience one could consider to be natural and grounded. So, to return to the picture we asked you to envision at the start of the video, why should this dusk just feel different? After all, it is just a bunch of trees, a giant orb in the back, and expanses of condensed water vapor hanging in front of literally empty space. Yes, perhaps it is all just that, but it is beautiful and mysterious, because nature is just the way it is.